The Train of Time, a lesson from Mr. Harris. At a cozy cafe tucked away in a small Midwestern town, 32-year-old Marcus Reeves often found himself sharing a table with Mr. Harris, a retired railway engineer in his late 70s. Marcus, a rising tech entrepreneur, initially saw these casual meetups as polite obligations, something like humoring the local elderly out of courtesy. But one afternoon, something Mr. Harris said reshaped how Marcus viewed aging, time, and respect. "Son," the old man said, sipping his black coffee, "don't laugh at a man just because he's slower now. Sooner or later, you'll walk the same path he's on." Marcus chuckled. "You sound like a fortune cookie." But Mr. Harris only smiled. "Maybe, but it's a truth deeper than most realize." That sentence lingered in Marcus's mind for weeks. As someone who prided himself on productivity, youth, and forward thinking, he rarely thought about the inevitability of aging. But Mr. Harris's words carried weight. He wasn't scolding or warning, just stating a universal fact. Time is ruthlessly fair. Time doesn't care if you're a millionaire in your prime or a forgotten man in a nursing home. It doesn't slow down for youth or speed up for old age. Everyone is aboard the same one-way train, heading from birth toward death. The seats may differ, some may have a better view, better service, but no one can change the direction or destination. Marcus began to notice something peculiar. His own impatience toward older folks in the grocery store, the way he'd mock his uncle's inability to use a smartphone, or how he rolled his eyes at his neighbor's daily ramblings about how things used to be. But what he hadn't realized was that those slow people were just a few carriages ahead of him on the same train, and they carried wisdom. Mr. Harris, for example, had seen his share of heartbreaks, recessions, wars, and recoveries. When Marcus once complained about a failed investor deal, Harris didn't offer a technical solution. He told a story about how he rebuilt his life after his wife passed, quietly revealing a strength and resilience that no podcast or business book ever taught. That's when Marcus understood. These older people were walking encyclopedias, filled with emotional strategies for survival and perspective forged through decades. Laughing at them wasn't just insensitive, it was stupid. He was mocking the very wisdom he would one day need. And more than that, Marcus realized something profound. How he treated the elderly wasn't just about them. It was also shaping how others, especially his young daughter, would eventually treat him. Children mirror the adults they observe. If Marcus dismissed older folks as burdens or punchlines, what would stop his daughter from doing the same to him in 30 years? There's a saying Mr. Harris once quoted, "Mock not the weary, for you too shall tire." The moment Marcus internalized, he found his ego quieting. He began slowing down a little, listening more, rushing less, asking questions instead of judging. From that day on, Marcus brought Mr. Harris a coffee whenever he saw him. Not out of pity, but out of respect. For the man, for the years he carried, and for the years Marcus hadn't lived yet. Because now he knew, one day, he'd sit in that same chair. And he could only hope someone would treat him not as a burden, but as a treasure. The Blessings of Kindness. Lessons from a Stranger. It had been several months since Marcus Reeves started making regular visits to the small-town café where he met Mr. Harris, the elderly former railway engineer. Their friendship had grown deeper, and Marcus had started viewing life with a new lens, especially when it came to aging. But that shift in perspective was only the beginning. One day, after helping an elderly woman cross a busy intersection downtown, Marcus told Mr. Harris about the experience. The old man smiled warmly. "That wasn't just kindness," he said. "That was laying the bricks for your own road ahead." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You ever hear the phrase, 'blessings come quietly'?" Mr. Harris asked. "When you respect the elderly, you're not just doing good for them. You're building shelter for yourself, for the days when you'll need a hand." That idea struck Marcus hard. In the hustle of modern life, people often did good deeds, hoping for immediate results. Praise, gratitude, recognition. But Harris was talking about a deeper kind of karma, one where your actions ripple across time, returning to you when you least expect it. He went on to explain a proverb he had learned from an old Chinese friend during his railway days. "Don't laugh at someone's hard path.
You'll eventually walk with Wang Dao, too.
Wang Dao, his friend had explained, wasn't a person, but a symbol, the hard road of age, toil, and wisdom. Everyone must walk it eventually. That saying, Harris told Marcus, carried 3 layers of wisdom. First, it teaches reverence for life's natural rhythm. Youth fades, strength softens, hair grays. Accepting that with humility rather than fear brings a sense of grace and peace. Second, it encourages learning from elders instead of ignoring them.
There's value in old age.
Harris said,
It's not a curse. It's a library.
their insights come not from theory, but from trials, regrets, mistakes, and a few victories. Third, it reveals the law of cause and effect. The way you treat people today, especially those without the strength to fight back, creates a blueprint for how you'll be treated tomorrow. This insight made Marcus reflect on his daughter again. She was only 7, but incredibly perceptive. He realized that every time he spoke kindly to the elderly, opened a door for daughter, Lila, for a walk through the neighborhood. As they strolled past their neighbor Mrs. Granger's house, interaction, reason is about propriety. Don't be too distant, like a stranger behind closed doors, but don't be intrusive either, knocking at every hour, prying into someone's personal life. A polite greeting in the hallway, a smile in the elevator, a small thank you when someone holds the door. These are the bricks of respectful distance. Emotion adds the warmth. It's noticing your neighbor juggling groceries and offering help. It's checking in when you hear someone coughing all week. It's leaving a little holiday cookie plate by their door with a handwritten note. Small gestures that whisper, you're not alone. Marcus remembered his childhood in the suburbs. Back then, neighbors shared recipes, tools, and babysitting. When his mother made stew, she'd send a bowl to Mrs. Patel next door. When their car broke down, Mr. Patel lent them his without question. That was community. He decided to try a new approach. The next morning, he bought coffee and knocked on his upstairs neighbor's door. The man opened it cautiously. "Hey," Marcus said, handing over the cup. "I lost my temper the other day. That wasn't fair. Let's reset." The man blinked. Thanks." Later that week, Marcus brought a small box of cookies to the family's kids with a note. "For your trampoline performances, keep the landings soft." The father came down that evening to apologize for the noise and offered to split the cost of the mirror repair. That one olive branch changed everything. Over time, the tension faded. The hallway chatter became casual, the noise softened, and the occasional potluck invitations began appearing at Marcus's door. He realized that neighborhoods are like gardens. They need watering. Neglect breeds weeds. But with patience, kindness, and a little humility, even the toughest patches can bloom. In the end, Marcus didn't just reclaim his peace. He gained something far richer: connection. Finding your place, the true meaning of duty. It was a chilly fall afternoon when Marcus Reeves took a walk through his old neighborhood with his daughter, Lila. The leaves crunched under their feet, and the scent of wood smoke drifted through the air. As they passed by a row of older homes, places filled with memories, Marcus found himself quiet. Lila looked up. "What are you thinking about, Daddy?" Marcus smiled faintly. How different life used to feel. People knew each other, helped each other. It wasn't perfect, but it felt warmer. Later that week, over coffee with Mr. Harris, Marcus shared his feelings. Why does life feel so much colder now, even though we have everything? Technology, convenience, security systems? The old man didn't respond right away. He stirred his coffee, then said, "Because people stopped knowing their position in the world. They stopped doing their part." Marcus tilted his head. "You mean like responsibility?" "Deeper than that," Harris said, "talking about duty. Not in a military sense. I mean understanding the role you play, who you are in each moment, and what that moment requires of you. He leaned in. When you were a son, your duty was to bring peace to your parents' hearts. When you're a father, your duty is to be a safe place for your child. When you're a neighbor, it's to contribute to the harmony of the space. When people forget their duty, everything becomes chaotic. Marcus thought of how irritated he used to get with older people, only to later realize how much they had to teach him. He thought of the neighborly conflicts that evaporated once he took the initiative to be kind instead of defensive. He thought of Lila, watching, absorbing everything he did. It all made sense. Duty, as Mr. Harris described it, wasn't about blind obedience or forcing oneself into a mold. It was about dynamic awareness, reading the room, knowing your place, and acting in a way that keeps the balance intact. You see, Harris continued, people think freedom means doing whatever they want. But real peace comes when you do what you're meant to do, not out of pressure, out of clarity. That night, Marcus reflected deeply. When he was with his parents, his duty was to reassure them with a stable, honest life, not to burden them with complaints. When he was with his team at work, it wasn't about bossing or pleasing, it was about leadership with integrity. With his daughter, it wasn't about spoiling her, but about guiding her. Everything felt simpler when viewed through the lens of rightful duty. In the weeks that followed, Marcus began to embody this mindset. He listened more carefully to his wife's concerns instead of dismissing them. He praised his team for effort instead of only results. He reminded Lila to treat her classmates with kindness, but more importantly, he showed her how. What surprised him most was how this shift affected his internal state. He no longer felt the same restless anxiety. He wasn't always measuring himself against others or stressing about whether he was doing enough. He just did what was needed, one moment at a time. That subtle peace, that inner stillness, was worth more than any success he'd chased before. And slowly, almost magically, the world around him began to feel lighter. Because when a person finds their rightful place and honors it, they stop pushing against life, and life starts flowing with them. Misplaced roles, misplaced peace. It was during a Sunday morning grocery run when Marcus saw it happen. A teenager rolled his eyes at his grandfather for walking too slow. "You're so annoying. Why do you always need help?" the boy muttered under his breath. The old man looked down, embarrassed, and Marcus felt something stir inside him. Back in the car, Lila asked, "Daddy, why did that boy talk to his grandpa like that?" Marcus sighed, because he forgot who he was supposed to be in that moment. That evening, as they ate dinner, Marcus thought back on his own past, his impatience, his harsh words, the times he had laughed at people he didn't understand. He hadn't meant harm, but he now realized that most conflict in life didn't come from evil intent. It came from being out of place, from forgetting one's role and abandoning one's duty. The next day, Marcus told Mr. Harris about the incident. The old man, ever patient, nodded knowingly. "That's the root of most troubles in the world, son. People stop playing their rightful part. When you step out of your role, your actions go sideways, and peace goes with it." Marcus asked, "But what about when people feel stuck? Like they're doing their part, but still unhappy?" Harris leaned back. "Then they haven't understood their part clearly. Duty isn't slavery, it's clarity. Once you understand where you stand, the rest gets easier." He continued, "A young man should respect elders, not judge them. A neighbor should act with courtesy, not entitlement. A student should focus on learning, not on competing for name brands or popularity. When you forget your place, you chase shadows, and shadows give no peace." Marcus saw the truth of that in his own life. He remembered when he first joined his tech company, he wanted promotions, praise, and power before even mastering the basics of his job. He would eye the manager's office and grumble under his breath when others got recognition. But what he hadn't understood then was that envy is a sign that you've abandoned your lane. Peace doesn't come from getting more. It comes from giving your best where you stand. And once he had embraced that mindset, doing his job with care, letting go of comparisons, he had not only earned the trust of his team, but also felt lighter at the end of each day. Duty, he realized, is not about sacrificing dreams. It's about building the foundation to hold them. Marcus had a conversation with Lila after school. She was upset because some classmates had fancy phones and branded clothes. "Why don't I have those?" she asked. He didn't scold her. He simply said, "Because your job right now isn't to look rich. It's to grow rich in heart, in mind, in strength. That's what lasts." She looked confused, but thoughtful. Marcus knew the seed was planted. He wasn't preaching anymore. He was living it. That night, as he journaled before bed, Marcus wrote something he would later tape to his mirror. "When I stay in my role, I stay in my peace. When I chase someone else's part, I lose both." And from that point on, whenever life felt chaotic, that sentence helped guide him back. Because sometimes, the simplest truths are the ones that set you free. Within months passed and winter settled over the small town. The days grew shorter, the nights colder. But inside Marcus Reeves's home, warmth had found a permanent place. Not just in the fireplace or Lila's laughter, but in the quiet contentment growing in his heart. One evening, as snow blanketed the streets and families gathered indoors, Marcus sat with Mr. Harris by the cafe window for what would unknowingly be their last conversation. "I've been thinking," Marcus said. "All these years, I blamed bad luck, bad people, or a broken system whenever something went wrong. But lately, I've started asking a different question." Harris smiled. "Go on." "Instead of asking, 'Why is life hard?' I ask, 'Have I done my part?' And most of the time, I hadn't." Harris gave a soft laugh. "That's the beginning of wisdom, son. Not when you change the world, but when you start changing your lens." They sat in silence for a while, watching snow fall under the street lamp. Then Harris said, "Remember the 3 things we talked about?" Marcus nodded. "First," Harris said, "don't mock the elderly. You'll grow old too. That's wisdom across time. It teaches humility." "Second," Marcus added, "neighbors matter. We're not meant to be fortresses. That's wisdom in space, how we share the world." "And third," Harris concluded, "do your duty. Know your role. That's wisdom of the heart. It's the compass." Marcus sat with those words, feeling how they had slowly, gently rearranged his life. These weren't just quaint sayings. They were a code for living. The old man looked out the window one last time. "You know, we often chase happiness, but happiness doesn't like being chased. It shows up when you're still, doing what's right." Marcus never saw Mr. Harris again after that day. A few weeks later, he learned the man had passed peacefully in his sleep. He left behind no fortune, no grand legacy, just a few notebooks, a worn-out coffee mug, and a ripple of quiet change in the lives he touched. At the funeral, Marcus shared a few words. "Mr. Harris taught me that life doesn't need to be spectacular to be meaningful. It just needs to be sincere." Afterward, Marcus began teaching Lila the same 3 principles, not through lectures, but through how he lived. They volunteered at the senior center. They baked extra for the neighbors. They always asked, "What's my part in this moment?" Over time, Marcus discovered something rare. His mind grew quieter, his heart steadier. He